It's the Dev Friday Show with Mark and Tim.
Well, we are back at it once again, and you know what? I think our titles are always interesting because they rarely reflect what we're going to be talking about, because we do absolutely know show prep. But today I asked the AI what the title should be, and this is a variation of what we got. So we'll see how that goes with this show. I think, Mark, we've got all the shows up on the site now. Is that the case?
I think so, Tim.
Except for the one we are making right now.
The build is working on my end.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out. For some reason, Doctor, I tried to do a test run and it wouldn't do anything.
Gatsby. Gatsby sucks.
Is it? Do we have we moved over to a new
I'm working on it. I'm working on
it.
It's on my list. It's on my near term list to get this off of Gatsby. I've talked about this with you. We're like, I was in love with Gatsby about like a year ago, and then since they made a bunch of changes, bunch of library changes, and it started to break some things, and I was like, I just have you get to the point of working on a project, and that project depends so heavily on a framework or on a platform.
Second. Are you saying you are not a fan of dependencies?
And then you hit this wall where you're like, or let's say it's a developer come to Jesus moment. You're saying, okay, am I going to just embrace this framework and I'm just going to go all in?
Right. I'm going to be this type of a programmer.
I'm going to be watching the commits on GitHub. I'm going to be an active part of the open source community to support this project in order for my application to be stable. And I was like, I did consider that. I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I should be paying better attention to the pull requests and to see what's going on from a development standpoint. But like I said, with Gatsby, it's kind of it just worked. It was a nice stable system, and it was kind of when we occasionally would do our show, when we would keep on schedule, do like a push once a week, or actually we had the automatic build process going.
Once I pushed to GitHub, it would build automatically, right?
The GitHub Actions, that was working out fine, and then that just stopped working because of the libraries, the dependencies that the framework has based on Node, and so I was like, all right, yes. So I am considering moving on and looking at a very kind of simple. I'm getting more into server-side JavaScript and React. I think it's because of what I'm
interesting.
Working on. Interesting. I'm looking at React server-side components. That's actually been super, super interesting. And you kind of spinning up a simple Express server, which gives you some, kind of very easy API routes, but then having rendering server components, React components on the server, and then having that sent through the API is actually a pretty interesting thing. So you can do some of your component development on the server and then have that pass back to your applications using your API. So I'm playing with that a little bit.
One thing I remembered years ago, when not that I was playing with it, but seeing it in use, was the idea of being able to do server-side renders that are the same as client-side renders. Like use the same code in both places, render a full page on server side, push it down, and then it would be basically the same React style code that would update it on the fly there. It's like, so you'd be using the same templates, the same concepts. So you could get the user a full page, because sometimes it's nice to be like, here's all the HTML, it just renders. You don't have to wait for it to render, then load the app and then make API requests. You can preload it with that, but then the app still works as if it was just the same.
So I have been seeing the benefit of, I haven't done too much server-side JavaScript or TypeScript or Node.js and doing with the any API work, but then spending some time doing that for my web development class, showing them how APIs work and just showing them basically how we can just spin up a quick API with an Express server, just because they know JavaScript and they know PHP too, but kind of keeping them, we're the past, let's say 3 to 4 weeks, spending a lot of time on client-side JavaScript, getting them into React, getting them to understand like a component model to build out interfaces. And then finally got to that point and then said, okay, now we want to start connecting this to a server-side application that has a very simple API. So we can, we can fetch some data, get the data back, and process that data on the client from the server. It's seeing, going from JavaScript and keeping that on the server and also on the client side, it seems to be they've been able to get that. So I don't know. Have you from I don't know from your developer friends who do you know any developer friends who do any Node.js or any JavaScript APIs?
Not, I mean, I used to work with that more with devs that were doing that type of thing because of projects we were working on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, plenty of Node use in a build process for
Mm-hmm.
building things, right? But that we're actually like say, hey, we're running this on a Node server. Not currently, right? Where I used to see that is, well, not where I used to see that. The one novel approach I saw that years ago was some microcontrollers that ran Node. And that was super interesting, but also a
Mm-hmm.
little odd because
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript running on a microcontroller or interpreted or what, however they pulled it off,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different. But that, at least that syntax, well, it was even more than syntax because you had Node. So yeah, but no, not currently.
So where do you stand on the whole? I don't want to make this like a PHP versus JavaScript. Honestly, that's where I always go. I don't know because I do JavaScript, you do PHP, so that's our show. So like, where do you stand on? Because I was comparing. I was talking to my students about the fact that PHP it still runs what 60-70% of the internet.
I thought it was more than that.
Well, it's because of WordPress, which I talked about.
There's also that.
But
yeah.
I think I read that was 30-40 just purely maybe non-WordPress related PHP applications. Like if you combine like just
like
general,
if you just and when
general
you build
PHP
these stats,
scripts,
it's like crawlers crawling everywhere,
Yeah.
looking and saying, we have identified that the server is responding in such a way that it indicates this is a PHP server.
Mhm.
Also, responding in such a way, I guess, that indicates it's not WordPress to give you. So,
Mhm.
so you're seeing what some stats that say 30% of the internet runs on PHP, not
It's like
WordPress.
between like 30. It's between like 30 to 40, but then if you add WordPress into it, it's like 70.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's what I bet. But then because I did talk to my students about that, say they learn PHP in the server side scripting class, and PHP is still the most popular kind of web server web development language to build server side applications with on the internet. So, but I wanted to show them this different way, and kind of when we did a little compare and contrast of the process models, or with Node.js, with having its non-blocking asynchronous style process, with compare that to a PHP with a multi-threaded, still single process, but it could be run in a multi-threaded context. Correct? Am I correct about that? I believe I am. Like
Okay.
depending
So
upon
you can. I mean,
it can handle multiple requests based on
yes,
threads
because
on the server.
Because each process is its own thread.
Yes.
Now,
And
but you can also do other things. But in a normal PHP
Yeah.
installation, you have one thread that is handling a request, but your server will be able to be running multiple copies.
But but within that thread, it's still like a blocked process in a sense. You can't like add like another process to the same thread.
I mean, traditionally, the way that you normally program PHP, that is basically the constraint in the model that we work on.
Okay.
You can do other things that are novel and interesting. You can do asynchronous PHP.
And that's an issue. So how would you set up like an asynchronous non-blocking threaded PHP system?
I don't do a lot of that, right? Because from what PHP code is normally doing, handle a request, the blocking in some ways can be useful, right? Like I know this is what's going to happen. I don't have any weird wait states where it's like, we got to wait for that to finish up, but we're still spinning our wheels. But can PHP do that? Yes, you can run. And especially with, I think it was when generators came into the language, that opened up a lot of possibilities. But even for years, there were extensions that did that. Like the curl multi extension is a good example where it would allow you to be making multiple web requests, external web requests, and then kind of just waiting for them to come back and do other work while you're waiting. So non-blocking web requests. And that's how you would build something in PHP that would be able to crawl or make a whole bunch of web requests simultaneously, because it didn't have to wait for each one to finish. It could be like, make this one. Oh, that one's done. Okay. And it kind of manages that in a loop of some kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similar to how you do async stuff. PHP does. There are libraries and packages that help you do async stuff with PHP. It's a lot of lift though, because you'd have to have the async compatible whatever you're trying to do, right? Like there is an async, like a MySQL driver, that you should be able to do async SQL requests, which if you're doing a lot of data heavy stuff, you may not want to wait for the query to come back. You may want to do some other things while you wait for the big query to come back. Usually where you find this is when we're using PHP, not to handle web requests, but in a worker context where PHP is doing background processing, things like that. And you can say, well, why are you using PHP for that? Not another language that might be better. Well, you're using PHP because that's what all your code's written in. You might as well just use the same code, use the same libraries, use the same business logic for the stuff that you've shifted off to be a background task.
I remember back in the day, Ruby was really good at that.
What of shifting stuff into a background task?
Well, you all just having like a worker process that's running. I remember back in my Ruby and Rails days, running a Ruby kind of process that basically it's just a worker. It's just watching for jobs and then
right.
off, yeah.
In PHP, yeah. But there's a lot. There's a lot of things that we can do to either launch multiple processes or use async stuff to.
Not saying it was the best approach, but it was definitely that was my first experience of dealing with like spinning up workers. That'd be like a constant process. Did
Ruby even use a queue, or did it just like abuse a database for that?
No, it was a queue. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was that was my first experience kind of working with that and then kind of seeing, like I said, sometimes it worked well, sometimes I don't know. But usually you would use a service that would manage the workers. Right. So if the workers, if something happened, failed, it would just, spin the next one back up again. So
you're explaining the different models. So Java, but because JavaScript, or not JavaScript, but when you're running a node server, that's stateful. That's sitting there. It's accepting requests. It's spinning off new handlers essentially, and it's all in one process, if I'm not mistaken, right?
But it's like it's a process that has like it has a queue built into it, right? So it accepts requests, puts that within the queue cycle, and then kind of in the series of operations with it. But it was just interesting comparing, contrasting, thinking about PHP and talking about how the default blocking nature of that single threaded, within that threaded process, even though it could run in a multi-threaded context on the server, and then kind of just comparing and contrasting to the way Node.js works, which I think is just
the thing there is Node is usually behaving as the server as well, and that's what PHP generally doesn't do. Generally, there's another server in front of PHP that then passes requests off to it.
Yeah,
and it's either running as a module of Apache, where Apache's managing the individual requests and just spinning up a new thread for PHP each time, or I don't know if it's actually a thread depending on the model. I don't remember.
What's your preferred web server? It's been a while. I remember last time
I don't do that stuff anymore.
If it was NGX, I think it was where I last did my
PHP if someone said I had to spin up some type of actual web infrastructure, I'd be using Nginx and PHP FPM behind it. So I'd throw a container of Nginx up there to act as the web server, and then tell it every request that should go to PHP, route it to make that request to another container that was running PHP FPM. So I think the standard anymore, if I recall correctly. But it's been a very long time since I had to do any of that. So.
Well, I'm glad we could start off the show with some deep developer talk, Tim, because I think the last show.
What was the last show?
We got pretty deep in the woods about just chatting about ChatGPT
and AI and the future there. Yeah.
Which is interesting. It is like still, and I don't want to spend the whole show talking about it, but it is.
Somehow you are, though. Somehow we're back there, right? Yeah.
It is crazy. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. Yeah, because I was thinking about this yesterday, how fast it's just moving. And I was excited about this when it first came out as a developer, because I know people are up in arms saying, "Oh, the developers gonna be out of a job," but they're not gonna. We're gonna have the AI code everything. And I was like, "Come on, settle down."
You're gonna have the developers fix it, but okay,
exactly. I was gonna settle down. And if you actually look at the code, it's super helpful. Like I look at it as it's like the name implies Copilot, or it's just like your own personal kind of tutor or guide, in the sense of like saying usually you'd have to go to like Stack Overflow, go to Google, and had to hunt and peck for certain answers and try to figure that out. Which honestly, that if you get really good at that, if you can read you can hop on a Stack Overflow page and know within 5 seconds if that page is going to give you a good answer or not. That's a skill to be able to
but if that is your skill as a developer, if that is your skill, then yes, ChatGPT is going to replace you, because it's probably going to be. But let's for a second though, before we go to them, have you tried Bard?
No, and I was going to talk to you about that because I know I saw your tweet. I did not step into that because I was like, first of all, is it just invite only now?
Yeah, they sent out an email and they're like, we're inviting you. You know, you made the cut. You know, you're going to be our early adopters.
You're
So
special.
click this button. Yeah, we're giving you preview access to it. I'm like, okay, click this button. It's like join our wait list. Like that's not preview access, Google. So I joined the wait list, and then I guess 6 hours later, 10 hours later, whatever, I got an email. Oh, you're welcome to Bard.
Well, they need somebody to test it.
Man alive. I mean, I don't know. It seems to think that it can read the internet because I paste it links, and that's been my fun thing is like analyze this data, tell me something about it. And it was really thoroughly wrong, is what it was. I gave it my thread from last week about playing a telephone with ChatGPT and Midjourney.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, can you summarize this thread? And it said, sure. The thread is about the importance of being able to summarize information. It is not. The author, TJ Lytle, argues that being able to summarize is a valuable skill. I did not. That can help you in many aspects of life, such as in school. Didn't mention school. Work. Didn't mention work. And your personal life. This whole thread was about the Mona Lisa and how we were passing the data back and forth. That's what it. He provides some tips on how to improve your summary skills. I didn't, such as reading widely. Didn't mention it. Practicing summarizing different types of information and getting feedback from others. None of this is in that thread. Not a thing. Here is a summary of the thread. And then it gives me what's, I guess, an interesting outline if you wanted to talk about summarizing things, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the thread. What did you tweet? You tweeted something out earlier about you wished, was it DOS? Was that I wish I could run a command line text-based Bing process.
Because I was surprised how I always swore off Edge. Even when Edge adopted Chrome as for their engine, Chromium.
Well, WebKit, right?
WebKit. No, it's Chromium.
Is it really?
I guess. No, if we go down to the root, it would
Isn't
be
it WebKit. I thought,
but Chromium is an open source project.
So they borrowed.
They because
I know
they built Edge around that.
Doesn't Chrome use WebKit?
I guess, yeah. I guess you would see it. Like I haven't dug that deep into it. But Chromium's the open source project that's not related.
And they borrowed Chromium?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
It's pretty much Chrome. Like Edge is pretty much Chrome. And it's been that way for a couple of years. And I said, it has the same rendering engine, which is nice. But that was like, I don't want
it's
Microsoft.
Like Chrome, but you don't have to worry about Google's privacy policy. You have to worry about Microsoft's privacy policy.
This is my dilemma. I was starting to go through this week. I was like, oh man, I was like, I saw that they, ChatGPT, I do pay for ChatGPT, and I saw that they released the new version 4, even though it's kind of slow, and I don't know, it is good, but it feels really slow. Just
like on that topic, I've had issues where I did that whole image back and forth thing where it actually described the images for me. Yeah. Now I give it stuff, it won't even parse the images. It's like I'm a language model, bud. I can't follow links. I'm like, what are you talking about? You did last week.
Like I asked us something yesterday, a programming question or something like that about some code, and it gave me it started giving me a real long answer and different kind of blocks of code as different examples, but then it just stopped. Like I think it hit its own token limit or something like that and just stopped. I was like, all right, I'm not. So I went back to the 3.5 version because it was like the 4. It just seems like, I don't know if it's a server issue or just a performance. They haven't scaled it up yet. But yeah, I was going through this dilemma because I was like, okay, I'm getting really into ChatGPT. It's super, super useful. It's minimizing the amount of searching I have to do on Google, and it saves me a huge amount of time. So Bing, since everybody was talking about Bing incorporating ChatGPT into it, why did I try that out? So yeah, I opened up Edge because they do force you, if you want to utilize a chat feature of the Bing chat feature, you have to use Edge. You can't use another browser. Like I would prefer to use Firebase and just access the Bing search engine, but they force you to use Edge. It's like, all right, so I open up Edge and I started using it. It's like, yeah, it's not that bad. But then I'm like, yeah, now I'm at the point where like I'm just giving Microsoft all my history and information with every site I log into. Yeah, it's just keeping track of me now. So I'm like, all my privacy concerns, I'm just throwing out the window.
Yeah.
Just for speed, simplicity, and make my job a little bit easier. I'm just not caring about my personal privacy anymore.
I believe it was Ben Franklin that said that.
Yeah.
That those who give up their digital privacy in exchange for ease of AI,
he was way ahead of his time.
Something about like deserve to be quoted by Abraham Lincoln or something. I forget how that went, but it was like that.
Yeah.
It was like that. So
Well,
you wished you could run Bing from the command line.
Yes.
And I told Bard, I
Yes.
said, hey, Bard, write a witty response to this tweet. And Bard was like, I'm not sure what's more impressive, that you've been to 80 countries or that you found a way to make your passport look like it's been to 80 countries.
Where is that coming from?
I don't even understand it. And there was one point, it's gone away now, but there was like some UI where I could see the other things it thought might be possibilities.
Mhm.
And they were all terrible. It was like you asked, I don't know, like you just give me 3 random comebacks that have absolutely nothing to do with it. Okay. Oh. I just tried it again. It got better. Here's a witty response to the tweet. I'm not sure if I should be impressed or scared that my AI assistant can write better jokes than me.
The AI doesn't know if it should.
I don't.
Because it's implying this is what you think.
I don't know, but it's still a response to your same tweet about Bing. And then it's telling me, though, like now it's getting upset. Because the next thing, it gives me that in quotes, but underneath it, it says, this response is witty because it is unexpected and clever. It also has a hint of self-deprecating humor, which is always appreciated. This is a train wreck, Google. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know.
I think
I'm sorry.
It's so interesting. I think because I'm not the only one who just they're Googling less. They're now switching from. I wasn't using Google Chrome for a while. I was using my Brave browser, which is based on Chrome. But yeah, I'm definitely not using Google as much. I think many more people are doing the exact same thing. They're switching over because it is just faster and you're getting better answers. But one thing I was thinking about this week as I was using, because I have thought about it would if developers embrace this, if they can kind of learn how to use it, build it into their workflows, it's definitely going to make them work faster. It's definitely going to be able to get them to solutions faster, be able to push more code. But I did not expect that the fact of like how it's getting super fast. Like how you're seeing even just the releases of the system. Like I think ChatGPT is releasing plugins, which I haven't seen that yet. I'm really looking forward to that. So they have this plugin. So once you start a thread, you can add like a plugin to, I guess, the thread. And so so if I want to have this thread also query websites or external or Wolfram Alpha, if I want to have another data source that I want to pull into ChatGPT,
that's interesting,
for the thread, they have this like a plugin system that then developers can make plugins for to integrate with it. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then also just saying too, like I was noticing all these over the past month or so, all these startups that have these tools built around on top of ChatGPT or one of these language models. And Microsoft is moving so fast to integrate, because what they were showing off of how they're going to integrate this into the Office suite or into the Teams application, which reminded me of what you showed me last week.
Chat Clippy,
that group chat API.
Oh yeah,
they're building that in the Teams. So basically, what you show me is that they're going to have that like an AI bot in like a Teams channel or thread that you can have a joint conversation with. So they're building these features into their existing applications. It's just going to kill all these startups who think like, oh, if I was like the first mover and build on top of these platforms, I can build a business that makes a lot of money. I'm like, no, well, it's just Google.
Nope.
Microsoft's definitely going to do it, and Google probably will once they can figure out their own AI. They're going to do the exact same thing and build out their own feature sets. And I don't think it's a real good time to kind of try to build a business completely around these AI models that are dependent upon platform that are controlled by these platforms. Because wouldn't it be nice if we did have an open source kind of AI platform like OpenAI was initially intended to be?
I mean, there's obviously two different arguments to that. Yes, that some people believe.
But then they realized, oh my gosh, we could make so much money. We could rule the world.
Yeah.
And then they just sold their souls to Microsoft.
I guess you could say there's that. But I mean, I think the net is understand how you can leverage AI. And I will say, I did that yesterday. Somebody's asking a question on how to do something. I just asked ChatGPT how to do it. And I was like, copy, paste. There you go. I don't need to figure that out. I can have ChatGPT come up with a step-by-step, go to this site, click this. It should be able to figure out how
Yeah,
to do this thing in this application.
I read an article how like the HR is using it to fire people, like all these layoffs in tech that we're hearing about. Like I guess they were able to analyze like the letters that the people are getting, and then compare that to, let's say, if you would try to request for this type of company, how, and trying to see how close it is to a layoff letter from coming out of ChatGPT. It's pretty close.
Oh, people were taking the letters that they were getting, and then
so developers are worried that they're going to get laid off by AI. Well, they pretty much are.
They may. Okay. So people are like asking ChatGPT to write this letter.
Yeah. And then, we need to lay off this type of employee. Could you write a letter to so we could lay them off?
Hey, when you care the best to have a computer send the message, there's something. I feel like I think that was the tagline at one point. Well, I'm glad that we're not spending all of our time talking about the AI stuff. That's good.
Well, like I said, if I could get this back on my command line, if I could access my TMUX, my WSL TMUX NeoVim setup, if I could just query the Bing AI, right, integrate that right into my workflow, I would definitely appreciate that.
Have you pushed any code to GitHub recently? There's a Mark segue from your TMUX. Have you pushed any code? Because I pushed code this morning. Have you pushed code this morning?
I think it was because I was working on some personal projects.
Well,
it was last week, not within the past. I don't think within the past week.
I haven't looked at Twitter to see how ablaze that is right now, but I'm sure there's plenty of developers this morning that tried to push code to GitHub and said, "What in the world?"
Oh, so what happened?
So when I tried to push the latest show, right, it told me, "Sorry, this server has been rejected. It doesn't match what is in your SSH known keys list."
Okay.
And I was like, "That's a thing. Is GitHub down?" So first go to GitHub, nope. And then just a quick Google of GitHub, SSH authorization key. And I think 8 hours ago, no, it'd probably be 10 hours ago now, something like that. No, 8 hours. Maybe what time is it now? I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock last night. They started, they had to change their key because somebody committed it. I think they uncommitted it, but I didn't read the whole blog post. You're gonna have to look.
So they had a repo of their keys, or somebody made a repo of their keys for the servers.
I think somebody inadvertently put it in a repo.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
So they had to, because this has been in my known keys list forever, and today, so there's many developers today are figuring out how they can run. I have to look at what the command is again. What is it? SSH keygen -r github.com to remove the known key there.
Okay.
Because they had to change that. So there's a blog post about it.
Yeah, that brings up, and I wish I should have made a note about this, but it was like I saw somebody talking about a command line application that's for encryption. To if you did, because managing SSH keys is kind of a pain.
Okay, yeah.
It depends, because you have to have a secure place to put it. You need to also make sure that place is backed up. So you just need to have a good workflow or a good plan about how you're going to manage these keys. That's what I feel. It feels it's always kind of a thing. Like I worry about, where should I be putting this? Because I can't put it in the repo, right? That's not good. That's exactly what you're talking about, right? Especially even if it's a private repo, right? Because you're still opening yourself up if you're committing this key that's this private key that is your key to your server you're hosting your application on. That could cause an issue. But there is this command line encryption. It's like a vault encryption command line program. Ansible Vault, that is. I was trying to do a quick little search to see if I can find it.
Yeah.
I saw a developer talking about this and how and it actually is pretty slick. It's just you just run the command Ansible-vault on it's a Linux program. So on WSL, could probably spin it up. And so just run it, and you basically pass it in your file or pass it in some text, and then it'll output that out as an encrypted file that then you can then store. So what he was saying he's doing, if you wanted to have a repo of your private keys, as long as they're encrypted, and apparently this encryption is trying to be what the newer version, I can't remember the version they're using, but it should be safe from the once the computers take over, the the quantum computers, quantum safe, I guess they're describing it as. So it's using a higher level encryption that should be quantum safe. So I don't know. That's an interesting idea. So if all the keys were encrypted, and that process of encrypting, decrypting was easy, would you store your keys in a repo and then push them someplace else?
I don't know.
Let's say if you just had just like we have a dot file, like, I don't know. Do you have a dot files repo?
A what?
A dot files?
Oh no, I don't. I mean, I probably should, but I
have a dot files repo that I keep as just a public repo, and then in that repo, I was thinking, I could put like a dot SSH directory inside of there, put my keys inside there, and commit it. I don't know if I'd keep it public though, but if somebody viewed my public directory, they would just see encrypted files, like of the SSH keys, right? So I don't know. It was something I was thinking about yesterday. I was like, it would be easy. It would be easy and convenient. And
because then you can duplicate it. Because basically, I do a new machine. I make sure, I copy the keys from my old machine.
Oh, what? Say it again.
If I get a new machine, it's just I copy the keys from my old machine.
Oh, from the old machine, yeah.
Yeah, and I do have backups, right? Like, so I have encrypted.
You do just like a hard back, like a cold storage backup with like some drives, or what's your process look like?
Right now, I back up my data to NAS on the network.
Okay,
and then encrypted backup to the cloud. So,
all right.
But to be clear, as I look at this, the key that was leaked was not used to access anything. It was simply just the key used to identify the server. But still, the SSH, the private key, was briefly exposed, they say, in a public GitHub repository. So they just regened it, and now it's different. But that's, I'm sure many developers woke up this Friday saying what's going on with my ability to
I just have to re-authenticate? Like what from?
You just have to tell. No, it's the SSH known hosts. So because you talked to me before, it's got the key. It says, "Yep, I know."
Well, I was wondering, are they going to force me to re-authenticate in order to create that host again, the host file?
No. I mean, it's just the SSH host file, right? Okay. So if you know what, if you were connecting to, I don't know, if you push via HTTP, it should be
most of my repos are set up like that. Usually HTTPS,
but if you're pushing via Git, which I am, which goes over SSH, then SSH is going to look and say, oh, SSH is going to say you're trying to connect to this IP address. I have a key for this IP address, and as the server identifies itself, that's no longer it. The public key that they give me is no longer it. So I can't validate that this server is the same, and it gives you this big error that's like, hey, the remote host may have changed. And in this case, we know it hasn't because GitHub said they didn't. So you just have to remove that known key from your SSH known hosts file. And there's an easy command to do it. And then you'll be able to push. But that was a surprise this morning when not only did Docker not run run my little test of the site, but then all of a sudden I can't even push to GitHub. I was like, what's going on here? This
so you do have
fun Friday.
I know I was working on that before, and I haven't done Docker because that's the other thing with Gatsby. Oh man, setting up a Docker image for that for a Gatsby website, I had like huge issues. I had issues like just file permissions. Like if I would run a Gatsby site, run the build process within
like running it in
Docker file, and then try to it just changed file. It's just a mess.
If you just run things as the normal user in a Docker container, it's going to be root on your main system because it uses that user ID. So you have to tell it to use your own user ID, and that means in the Docker container it looks weird because it's like I have no username.
So I totally got Docker if I was just going to run it if I want to run a process, like if I want to run a node command and basically just have a node alias to a Docker instant or Docker image that I would run, that was working pretty good. Or if I would do that for PHP or any kind of one process, I want to run a script, we'll run it through a Docker image. That I totally got that. But once I started using build systems within a Docker container, that's where it got to be just weird. I couldn't understand.
Yeah, because sometimes build systems will be like, I need to be root or I'm not root, and they get confused too. Yeah, that can be something that can use some troubleshooting. From my experience, for sure. Well, what else you got going on, Mark?
Well, I've been in a good headspace, Tim. I'm gonna keep my head down, trying to stay out of trouble.
You still looking for a new job?
I'm trying not to talk about that publicly as much.
Oh,
Try to keep it as but yeah, I'm still kind of
I
working
got some
towards that.
questions for you then.
But I'm just trying to
I feel like this
once
is
the summertime comes, I just need to get through the semester. Once the summertime
That's what you
comes,
said last year. This is exactly the conversation we had last year. He's like, no. Once summer comes, it's gonna be on. I'm gonna be on the job hunt, and then you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do another year.
Well, for you, since
another year.
Since this is just a conversation between me and
us,
you,
right?
Between us, and
Just
nobody else listens to this, so it's fine.
Not at all.
The linchpin to me feeling okay, I have to really start to make some progress on the next kind of phase of my career or my life is because my wife is retiring.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, I don't think anybody at my school would list is because she was planning to announce this like during the summertime, like beginning of summertime. So that happened.
This is actually breaking news. This is
no. I think the people who do the few people who do listen to this, they know, but like to make it official, that's kind of. And she has to give a certain period of time notice for the school and everything like that.
Well, I consider this that time.
So, but the thing is, that's kind of put in my mind. Said, okay, now that when the summer hits, semester's over, I got to really
be looking for that. Try to.
Gig. Well, I want to, and I was talking to my hairdresser about this yesterday. After I got you noticed, I did get my haircut. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was talking about what our summer
Wait a
plans
second.
were.
Are you saying you have another therapist other than me? That's not an official therapist, but when you Tim, use through other
I talk to you each week. You are my primary therapist.
Right.
My hairdresser, I see her maybe once a month, if that.
I don't know.
Once my hair gets too bushy and I can't take it,
I don't know about this.
I call her in. So I was talking to her about the fact, this is our summer plans and what we're looking to do. And so I was talking about also with my wife. And then I got all distracted now. What was I saying?
Apparently the hairdresser is giving you job advice or something. I don't know.
Well, it came to the issue. Why do I feel the need for because I like teaching. I like teaching. So I was talking. I love my time at the school. I love teaching. That's why I've still been doing it. But leaving or transitioning out, that's okay. This is what we're talking about. Leaving and transitioning out of academia, just from getting the timing right, is super, super difficult. I've struggled with this because there have been different times over my past 10 years, and I've been full time in academia. I'm thinking, how can I be the right time? Because when you have a normal job and you work in the real world, you just give 2 weeks notice, right? So you find another job while having your current job. You get hired.
All right, so you got to figure out.
You give 2 weeks notice.
Yeah.
If you're a teacher, professor, instructor, and you're committed, you sign up for a semester. You're kind of locked into that. Okay.
It's like, well, I mean, that's not necessary. Well, yeah.
I could still leave, but then you burn some bridges. Yeah, you're gonna cause some conflict with the department, and maybe especially people you have good relationships with now. They're going to be super frustrated because they have to kind of pick up the pieces then or find somebody to fill in, or especially in my department, the classes I teach, which I did set my schedule for fall to be a little bit more flexible. So if they did need to find somebody, it's possible. But all of my second year advanced courses, like the reason I teach them because I'm the only one at the college who could teach courses.
Right.
So and also to find adjuncts is a little bit of a challenge unless I teach more for like first year courses, like first semester, second semester courses. Those are a little bit more general, and finding adjuncts to teach those is a little bit easier. But yeah, if you want to try to find that kind of sweet spot of how to transition out of academia, go back into working full time. It's difficult because you have to either do it during the summertime, which you have good 3 months to do it, or a very short window, but in the wintertime between semesters.
Yeah. And I mean, you could be doing some of the work now if you wanted to hopefully get the leads. So maybe that's, you're not looking at in summertime and because depending on the right fit, if you do it a couple months beforehand, most companies I think would be like, oh yeah, we can see you can start in June, mid-June or whatever that would be with that schedule. So, but the thing I was curious about, now that we've talked about all that, and which apparently you didn't want to, but did.
We're going to bleep out the part about my wife. That could get me in trouble.
Yeah, because you know how much editing I do of this in post. It's phenomenal the amount of time I take.
Or maybe what I'll do, I'll bleep myself out. This is what I do before I give you the audio file. I'll bleep myself out.
Be great. Just be like silence, and then be like, "What is Tim talking? Nobody knows what's going on there." No, because internally, I thought this might be an interesting thing to talk about. My focus has been shifting to making sure our devs are growing professionally, like growing in their skills, growing in their craft, and all that kind of stuff. And I've been asking them 2 questions. I thought it might be interesting to ask you these questions
All right.
because, I mean, that's what the show
Sounds
is
good.
about. Is you've put me on the spot before.
Yeah.
What are the things now in academia? It's probably a little bit different, but imagine it's back and you're working, a normal quote unquote job, right? Or
Yep.
even maybe in academia. What are the things that to you make you feel like you're contributing? What are those things that say, yeah, this reinforces because I'm as open as this as
Mhm.
I think here or with our team,
Mhm.
right? I want to make it so you don't feel like you have to go someplace else to
Mhm.
find that either notion of fulfillment in one way that I feel like I'm actually a valuable part of this team. I want to make sure you don't want to go someplace else to feel like I want to grow and I can't grow here. I want to
And
make sure all those things can happen right here because we recognize that it's not just like it's a little bit of what you're saying, right? Transitioning out of academia. Um, when a developer leaves a team, it's not just like, oh, we need another dev that has the same level of skill. And then there's going to be some onboarding time as they get used to our code. No, it's
Mhm.
way more than that. As developers, all the stuff that we do is very, very collaborative. We're writing and using each other's code. So it's
Mhm.
not just that, oh, Bob's gone. We get somebody new in who has the same skill
Yeah.
level. They'll be fine. No, I knew how to work with Bob. I knew how to communicate with Bob. There's so much more about that relationship that it's more than just the fact that you can write code. It's more than just the fact that you maybe even be able to write very good code. It's the fact that once you're in a team, sure, there's the tribal knowledge and yeah, you get up to speed
Mhm.
on all the things that are hard to document. There's that, but it's just that as developers, we figure out how to work with each other. And when you take one of those people out, like I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen because you said, no, if I really want to grow, I need to look over there. Or if I really want to feel like I'm
All right.
valued, I need to go over there. So what are
So,
the things in the
well,
past that have said you're a valuable member of a team?
let's quantify the grow. Um, what you trying to look for? So we're taking money out of the equation completely.
In this concept,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. I mean,
So
I want that not to be a problem either.
okay, and then so if you say grow, do you mean grow as in a status level, skill level? I'm trying to think of what priorities are you looking for, like, or just a appreciation of their or like a life work balance. Like, what do you when you say I want my developers to grow? I know it probably means all of those, but if you
Right.
could rate,
That's the thing.
what are you leaning to? Okay, maybe then it's different for everybody. You
And
know,
that's what's been
yeah.
fascinating because I've had these conversations, and for some devs, it's it's one of those things, right?
Mhm.
And for others devs, it's a completely different thing.
And thinking about too when I'm going to be there looking for positions and kind of like, yeah, I don't think about when I was when I got out of college and was jumping between, well, I didn't really jump between jobs. Pretty much my first job was that for 5 years, and then bounced back and forth every other year for a couple jobs or for working for different companies. And it's starting off as a junior developer, what and junior developers need support, especially coming out of college and not having worked with other developers or worked in other companies before. Just getting them up to speed with not like you said, not just the code base, but also the way that the developers like to work within the department. Understand kind of the structure of like when you're given, let's say, a task or you're brought into a project. Well, what is that kind of process going to look like? How what would be
Right.
the
Right.
expectations of you? Understand the expectations of you is really, really hard for like a junior developer. Now, even though I haven't done or
What's interesting there, though, just I think this to highlight that
yeah.
is like what you're talking about is almost we'll talk about development environments, meaning the computer, the system that you use, and how your environment is
Mhm.
set up to write code. But what you're talking about there is like understanding the development environment.
Yeah.
It's understanding the environment that you're going to be in, which has so much impact on both of those things.
So, okay, we'll get back to the environment too. But then when I was in, let's say, working full time before academia, I think I got to that mid level kind of developer kind of standing. But then went back and forth between designing and like, I don't know. My career path is kind of crazy. But think about when I got to like that mid level, I didn't need as much support. What I appreciated more was a little bit more autonomy. So saying, okay, when I'm given a project, do I have some freedom in how I'm going to solve that problem? possibly.
What is it that the autonomy communicate? This is out of curiosity. Like why was that important to you?
Because I wanted to feel that I had some level of creative freedom within that project, especially because I think developers, all developers are creative in some aspect, because you're tasked with solving problems.
Yeah, whether you're a designer or not, you're looking at
Yes.
saying, I'm going to use a novel approach to this.
Yes.
So kind of going way back to the start of this, like when you just adopt a framework, you're like, I'm just going to turn out that same type of code versus, I'm going to take a little bit more of a, interesting approach.
How much freedom do you have to find the path to that solution, or is it more prescriptive? Now, I haven't worked in a really, really large company, let's say like a Google or Facebook, or let's say that has, existing systems that you have to really learn to understand the way that they solve problems. They want you to solve them in a specific way.
Right. It's understandable too.
But I was thinking back when like I said, when I was at that mid-level, where I got out of the junior level, kind of point in my career, so I wanted to have a little bit more freedom of the tools, the software that I use, libraries, even long as it still fit within the framework of the company or the development group that I was working within. But given the freedom to kind of try to find creative solutions, that was more important to me.
So and that's where, like, I want to understand a little bit more, like, that important because that felt good because you wanted to try new things and didn't want someone to be saying, no, do this way. You want to discover it on your own.
Exactly. Yeah. You still want to have the creative freedom to explore.
Okay. Was there an aspect, I just want to check, was there an aspect in that context when you say you want that freedom to explore, was there an aspect of that validating to you that they trusted you?
Maybe looking back at it, yes. At the time, I wasn't thinking about comparing, because I didn't, like I said, if you're only working for a company between, let's say, 5 to 10 years, like say you get out of that junior development role and you get after the 3 to 5 years, you start getting to that mid-level role. You kind of can build up trust if you've been there for that long. So I wasn't really thinking about how much they trust me with like a certain system or a certain set of, or database, or, or the type of application I'm trying to build.
Your primary driver then was just like, I want the ability to do something new and learn and learn as I solve problems, as opposed to somebody being like, here's a solution, now please code it up.
Yeah. And I think given new responsibilities and new experiences and like I said, I guess responsibility is the best word to describe it. Saying so if the system that you're making, how many users are going to have, I think that was something that is also kind of cool to think about. Okay, how many people are actually using the software that I'm making or working with the website that I was working with? Because one of the first things I did, I told you I worked for a tax administrator. Out of college, Berkheimer. I don't know if you. Berkheimer tax administrator. So I work for them, and then I also work for
I have had to use them.
I've worked for their sister company, which is an outsourcing company. So I spent time between both those companies, and I built their first online e-file system because I was the only person that did website work. So within a development group of, I don't know, it was about like 8 or 9 developers. All the rest of them were still just writing like the server command line terminal based software that internally that the company was running on, but we're starting to do more customer facing applications. And that was back in 2004, 2003, writing like a server side, application for people to log in and pay their taxes and see their taxes online. So, but given that opportunity to work on that project, and like I said, they just gave it to me just because I had interest, and also I was stupid and young, able to get my way through it. With some good, we actually had a consultant come in who was a little bit more experienced with it, so he's able to kind of work with me and kind of help me along at the time. But just given a project like that, and then thinking about how many people were going to be using that system, that was also really, kind of a good kind of encouragement in your, kind of help push you forward to try to do as best job as you can. Now, thinking back where I'm at now, and what actually, there's the money aspect. That's what if we take money out of it, that's a big reason of like with academia, you do hit a ceiling. I can only make a certain amount, and it's not that much.
So when you're talking about growth and that may you can't.
So for me, there's two things that drive me. First of all, it's the money. That's the big thing. The second thing, I want to get back to working with smart people. Because right before I got to academia, the projects or the jobs that I worked on that I most enjoyed was when I worked with smart people, or worked with people I knew were smarter than me, right? That I was learning from.
Because that challenges you, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's what I want to get back to. Like I want to be the stupid person in the room in a sense. Like, so I could learn, because when you're in academia, especially when you're teaching students or if you're working with other faculty, it can be a little bit more of a siloed, maybe sometimes there have been other
Right, because
faculty.
although I am completely avoiding the opportunity to say, you're saying you don't work with smart people now, and I
No,
think that's
I'm just saying
hilarious. But you're all your own
within-
domain experts, right?
Yes,
And
because
it's like, oh, Mark's the
yes,
expert of this, Bob's the expert of that,
exactly.
and you're like, yeah, I don't know the stuff Mark does, but
faculty-
Mark knows the stuff Mark knows.
Faculty are all kind of domain siloed experts
Right,
within their
right.
certain things, and colleges don't want to really hire multiple faculty that cover the exact same thing unless they need to. So like I said, I've worked with Josh Mill in the past. He probably might be listening to this, and Jason's
Yeah.
like the interesting. Jason's literally my current colleague. We do totally different things. Like he's great at new media, video animation, editing.
right,
That's his thing. Like commercial work, that's his thing. But he'll be the first one to say, from a web design perspective, yeah, he could do HTML, CSS. He can do a little bit of WordPress stuff, but from a scripting or development standpoint, that's not his thing. He doesn't like to do it at all.
So
Just
you want someone that's going to challenge you, not with something new and novel,
but within the
outside of
exact
your
same domain space that I want to be in.
Right.
So that's really, really important to me, along with the money. So it is interesting thinking about my life, my career, and thinking about different points. What you asked me, what do you look for in a opportunity or position in order for you to grow as a professional or as a developer? It definitely is. It changes depending upon where you're at in life.
Yeah. And then my second question, because the first one was about, what are the things that tell you you're valued part of this team, right? And you said like, creative liberty, autonomy, being able to make some of these decisions myself. The other question I've been asking is what in the past, and I think you touched on these a little bit, but, and I get what you're saying, like to grow, you want to be on a team where there are people that will challenge you, challenge your assumptions, help you look at things differently, so you can grow in how you even perceive code and understand it. But one of the questions asking is, in the past, what have been the markers, the indicators, the things that have really said to you, hey, I have grown? Not the opportunity to grow, but what are the things that have communicated, giving you that positive feedback that says, hey, there's been growth here. I can see it.
I think it's easy to see that from your knowledge base. So if you look back at what you've learned, I was just noticing this today. I was starting to get back into thinking about the algorithm questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Getting back to like leak code and starting to do that. I was like, it's been, I haven't done that for probably about a year or so. I was like, I need to start. Like I said, think about the summer, got to start refreshing my mind on some of these things. And then think about, okay, yeah, I started looking at a couple of questions, started answering them. And I was like, oh, it's actually, okay. It took me a minute. But then once I took me 5 minutes, I did this exact same thing like 5-10 years ago. And it came back to me, right? But that doesn't happen until you have experience, like with the growth, right? So think about how I've grown as a developer. I probably have so much knowledge in this head, but it's also, if I don't actively use it, it kind of stays up there some way, but it's also, I need to bring it back at this time. That shows me the fact of like, wow, if I look back at how much I've actually learned, that I may not be applying now, and I want to get back to applying it. I have grown so much to the fact of like just the knowledge base I've built over my career, and just a matter of just optimizing that and kind of understanding, kind of pulling those important parts out when I need them to be, and also solving problems too. I think solving problems is easier now in a sense where I'm more patient and be able to allow myself to kind of think through it. When you're younger and you're just starting off, you just want to just hit the wall. You just want to you have a hammer and you just want to bang through that wall. You're just constantly kind of hitting and chipping away, and eventually you'll get through it. But it's might not be as elegant of taking out the nice saw and power saw and be able to kind of draw a nice box hole so you can kind of walk through. So be able to spend some time to be patient and to think through the problem, think through a proper solution. You're still going to be a little bit of trial and error to kind of still work through it. But it's not like when I was younger, when I was like, wow, it was just brute force and everything. Right. But now I'm like, because I look back, it's like, I don't need to do that. Let me just not stress about it. Just kind of think through it. As long as I have some time, to kind of work through the problem, try to work through it in the best way so that I'm not as an inefficient, right? The solution I find is not as inefficient as it could be if I just try to like brute force it.
So to let's see if I can not repeat it back, but like the sense that I'm getting. On the one hand, a marker of growth is the fact that you have a much wider, a broader knowledge base, right? So when it's almost like when facing a problem and it's like, oh, that might be the solution, you're not just going, well, can someone even tell me what that is? It's like, oh yeah, I remember that. So you have this foundation to build on where concepts, they may not be right there in the forefront, but as you dig in, you're like, oh, I've seen this before. I have familiarity with this. I've worked on this before. So that's the one side. And then the other side is, and is it not related that when solving problems, it's not just the most direct, fastest, the one way I see to solve this. Is it not actually related because now you have a breadth of knowledge? There's a little bit more time to be like, well, let me think about this for a second. And before I take what seems to be the direct route, the obvious answer, let me think about some things based off of what I know, what I've experienced in the past, this breadth of knowledge now, and maybe I can come up with a more elegant solution, and maybe a quicker solution.
And also thinking about when you're faced with a problem, like I've never been the type to be afraid of challenges. Actually, I make up challenges just to make my life more difficult. But I know there are developers who maybe are afraid of, because I see this in students all the time, who are afraid of taking on a challenge because they don't know the path. But then the more experience you get, the more you grow as a developer, you know that, okay, there are many paths you can take. There are solutions. And a lot of the solutions that you'll find is maybe a variation of a solution that you came across in the past. So that when I look at a problem, or if I look at something I have to learn, like let's say if I want to be hired as this type of senior developer, well, these are the things I need to know, right? And I haven't done these things in a while, so let me start making a list of them. But I know that I can get there. I'm not afraid of it. It's just a matter of time and putting in effort and being disciplined enough to do that. But in the past, when I didn't have that, it did cause some stress. Like, even though I'm not afraid to take on the challenge, just me working through the challenge or trying to figure it out was hugely stressful. And I think it gets to be easier when you don't have to worry about, like, okay, you can get there. It will take some work. It'll definitely be hard, but you'll get there, right? And I think that's something that just comes with experience.
And then it would be confidence, not that the problem is easier to solve, but just the confidence that it is actually solvable.
Yes.
Versus just like, I don't even know.
Yeah. Because I do see that all the time with students who are like, though that'll be a block where like they don't know the solution, and then they'll just expect just somebody to give it to them. Right? They're saying, "Oh, can you just show me?" And I'm like, "Well, no, you kind of have to learn to kind of find your own path in a sense. Like, you have to use resource. I'll be your resource. I'll be your help.
Right.
But you're the one that has to kind of work through this issue kind of internally and kind of figure it out, because that's how you build that skill.
I actually asked ChatGPT what that was yesterday, because I was looking for exactly like this concept, right? Which I think maybe you can tell me the term that they gave me. We'll see, or maybe ChatGPT should replace you.
Someday, I hope so.
And we've only got a couple minutes left, so I'll try to make this quick. But I asked it, what's the technique called where you spend at least a little time trying to solve a problem? So I think that's what you're saying. Like, I've ran into a blocker and I don't have an answer for this. And can you just give me the answer? But you want to live in that place where I'm at least thinking about trying to figure it out. So this idea of, okay, you at least are going to spend some time trying to figure it out, but you're not going to spend so much that you just spin your wheels and you never come up with it before you go to ask for help. Because you can have either side, right? You can have the students that are like, oh, I can't figure this out, somebody help me. And you can have the students that are like, I can't figure this out, but I spent 3 weeks working on it. It's like, at some point you should have been like, hey, can someone? What's true? What is that technique or concept? Any idea? No. ChatGPT told me it's often called productive struggle. And I guess it says that, what is it, in an educational context, productive struggle is also often encouraged as a way to foster deep learning and retention of information. So there you go. Next time you can just tell a student, hey, this is a productive struggle you're going through. don't worry. It's going to foster deep learning and retention of information.
Foster deep learning.
I'm sure.
Deep learning.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that. But do you have rules like that for your students? Like it's like spend a little time, but not too much. Well, we'll have to answer that next week.
Yeah, I have to think about that.
Yeah,
Because I know I do, but the longer I teach, the kind of the slower I am to responding to students.
The longer I teach,
what I was trying to say, because what you were saying is if a student asked me a question how to solve it, in the past, when I first started teaching, I would really try to want to get
let me jump in and help you. Yeah.
Now I'm like, it's okay, just go off on your own for a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's what this is. That's what this theory is like off on your own for a little bit is helpful.
Well, I appreciate students who come with me with direct questions. So if I'm trying to show that, if I show them like here, what was the question they asked? Like we're doing with React, we're showing them a bunch of React examples the past couple of weeks here, and they would ask me specific, okay, that line or this state variable or this hook, if they ask me a specific direct question about that, I'll answer as soon as possible, because I want them to have that type of information so that they don't get hung up on the small things, the small aspects of what I'm trying to show them. But if I say, okay, I want you to work on a website or application that has this specific site of functionality. I want you to create a wireframe. It's a good example. Create a wireframe for a website or e-commerce website that's gonna it's gonna do this, this, and this. And what they would do, they may do it. They may kind of get it started, but they'll drag their feet about it, because they'll be like, I don't know what I should put there. I don't know how to draw that layout. Then I'm like, okay, then that's the point of like, I got to kind of push them on, because they have to do the work themselves.
Right.
Because then what I prefer to do, the way I like to teach, I like the students to show me work, and I'll just do a review or critique.
Yeah.
Because I tell them, like, this is what it's going to happen in the real world, like, especially for those that want to get into web development. You're going to be doing code reviews. People are going to be looking at your projects, your code, and they're going to be giving you feedback, and you need to be comfortable with showing your project in a work in progress state, and to be able to get feedback and to help improve your work. And that's a skill you need to develop in order to just be comfortable with that. Because I knew when I first started, that was a big challenge too. Just being comfortable with like somebody evaluating you on a weekly basis, just by looking at your code and giving you feedback on it. And that could be saying you're a bad developer, you need to do it better, and just kind of pointing out all the things that you're doing wrong. I know it can be a very challenging thing, but I think if you can do that, it'll definitely make you grow faster.
Yeah, that might be that's all good topics maybe for next show, because we're like we do feedback on every, like, there's peer review on every single line of code pretty much. So every PR you're putting into the system, there's going to be peer review on it, and we're finding we want to push more and more towards live review, where it's not like you make the PR, I go through, I add comments. It's like, let's just get in a Zoom room and look at it together. And even better, in my opinion, and I'm trying to push the team this way, is to what you might call pair review, where it's like one of you actually has the code open, and as you do it, let's make the changes. Let's just stop with the bottleneck of back and forth, and just get the review, work collaboratively. And if we could do that before the peer review, that'd be even better. Like the sooner we can move that in the process, because anytime where it's like we did the work and then we need to go back and redo it because something was wrong, trying to figure out how to shorten and tighten that loop as much as possible. But all good for next week, I guess. So,
all right.